Howdy everyone, welcome back to the MatchNet podcast. Welcome guys, we have Kozan Morimoto. How you doing, Kozan?
I'm really good.
Really good, that's good. And Cathy from Florida. How you doing, Cathy?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, it's good to have you guys. Today we're touching a touchy topic about crushes. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Now, to be honest, I know this is a topic that many people are dealing with who are preparing for the matching process. And I just want to remind you guys that this is the only podcast for you single folks who are preparing for the matching and blessing that I know of on the planet or in the universe. So we always appreciate you sharing it around with your family, your friends, your team, your people. And the only way that this spreads around is through word of mouth. So a share means a lot, because that's the only reason we do this, is to help more people just like you who are going through this matching process. Just like people like Kozan, right, buddy?
Yeah, I recommend it.
How old are you now?
I'm 18.
18. Okay, gotcha. 18 years old. Yeah. And so you wanted to have this topic today. Actually, let's go back a second and introduce ourselves just a little. All right. So Kozan, introduce yourself. What are you up to? Just in like a second, and then Cathy as well, so we know who you guys are a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi. My name is Kozan Morimoto. I'm 18 years old, and I'm currently on a gap year program called Generation Peace Academy. Yeah, I'm from Kansas City, Missouri.
All right.
My name is Cathy. You can call me Cathy. And I'm in my mid-30s, and I live in Florida. We moved here from the East Coast, from New England a while ago, almost a year now. I'm blessed with 3 kids, and I'm currently serving as blessing coordinator for our sub-region 2. And I'm also a personal trainer, but I'm on maternity leave. So that's a little bit about me.
That's a jam-packed bio right there. Thanks, guys. So I wanted to have both of you on this call because crushes is something that does come up quite frequently in our world, especially in our movement. And to be honest, it's a topic that I rarely touch because it's so far removed from my reality. And instead of just talking about it with myself, I wanted to get 2 people on here that have something profound to share. And actually, Kozan, this was your request. You wanted to be on this podcast. He was like, hey, we should do a podcast about crushes. I was like, great idea. And he was like, so when are we recording? I was like, okay, let's go. so initiation, which I love. So Kozan, tell us why is it that this topic is near and dear to you and you want to talk about it?
I want to talk about this because it's brought me a lot of crushes, have brought me a lot of pain, a lot of confusion in my life, and it like kind of hurt my relationships with my family as well, and like my own trust, and kind of left a lot of scars that I would rather no one to have. So I'm not pro at it, but I just wanted to be out there because I've always wanted some kind of information that was very relevant to me in the world, where I could help me go through this issue. So
yeah, so if you can explain a little bit what is it that's painful, like you said, about having crushes? Because according to every piece of anything on the internet, crushes are totally fine, normal, absolutely no problem. So why is it for you that it's such a tormenting thing? And I know this reflects a lot of people in our movement, so I think it's helpful to hear.
Sure. In our movement, I think, and it's okay in like the outside world, because we don't have like our movement has a standard. There's something that we want to, we have this mission to have the blessing for each and every one of us, and crushes aren't exactly that. Like the blessing, it's a process where we like talk to our parents, and I mean, some people do suggest someone, some people would have their parents choose, or they have like someone like Dr. Young, our continental director, to choose someone. But when we have crushes, it's like just us, and we know that it's like not maybe what our parents want, or not what our parents want, but oftentimes it's selfish, and it's hidden, and we keep it to ourselves, and we feel shameful about it, when it shouldn't. It shouldn't be something like that. It shouldn't be shameful
Gotcha.
since it's natural. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Kozan, look at me. Speak for yourself, bro.
Okay.
I'm asking
Oh,
you,
oh,
how has crushes affected you in your life?
yeah. Uh, well, I've had many crushes in my life. Upcoming to who I am right now.
Hmm.
And I've always had this, like, I've always kind of dived into fantasy, like, oh, well, would it, life be with this person, marriage with this person? And I wouldn't think of it like eloping and just leaving my parents and just marrying off. I mean, when I have had that experience, but usually having these fantasies, and oftentimes, like, I wouldn't think past myself and what the blessing's really about. Like, I didn't really have like any meaning. Like, what is the blessing? It's not. I always thought it was more just like a marriage. But I would be around these people, and I know like, oh, I'm not. You know, I feel like I was wrong to have these kind of crushes, and um, but then I want to be around them at the same time. I want to
Mhm.
talk to them, have this give and take with them. But then, I like that. My what I thought was the ideal and the standard and what everybody wanted me to do was like going this way, and I was going this way, and I was kind of just being split apart. And that kind of, I don't know, we call it midway position. It's just like super. It's really painful
Hmm.
because I see that there's like this thing that my parents want me to do, but I'm going this way.
Gotcha. So do you feel like there's kind of like a torment or discrepancy in your heart because you have values or standards as you call them, but you feel like you're doing something or not living up to those standards. So it causes you a little bit of heartache, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like conflict, conflicted about it. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. So Cathy, where's your heart at regarding crushes?
Yeah, prior to this, it was I had to really think about what I wanted to cover on this
Mm.
topic because I actually never thought about how crushes can impact you so negatively. But it has for many people. It's interesting because it's natural, right? It's God-given. I think we're meant to be attracted to the opposite sex. That's how God designed us to be.
Mm.
But it's God's role and what our understanding is of how we take that crush further, and is it God centered? And I honestly think crushes have a lot to do with the impact of society,
Mm.
what we watch, what we consume, and the media, and also like our parents and extended relatives. Like I remember, as young as maybe even 8, 9, or 10, going to like Thanksgiving dinners, and you have like family members who are outside the church like asking you, "Oh, do you have a boyfriend yet? Are you in a
Mm.
relationship yet?" And it's almost like an expected thing. So like that feeds our idea of crushes being okay, and that that they should be pursued. Um, but definitely because in our movement there's a standard, like what Kozan was saying, it's more difficult, and how you act and pursue that. I think with crushes, the most important thing is, what are you attracted to? Because it's a fine line between crushing on someone and lusting after someone.
Mm.
Is it the external? Is it you just like this person because you see them and you like them externally? Or is it their mindset, like what they have to offer to you internally? Are they going to lead you to where you want to be in values and faith in the future? So I think that's kind of where I'm thinking about
Yeah.
how to draw the line between healthy crushes and how to pursue that or not. So that's kind of like all my thoughts going in on around this.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love it. I think defining terms is important too, because when we say crushes, there's an underlying kind of connotation associated with that, which is usually like teenagers, 18 years
Mm-hmm.
old, going to GPA, having crushes, right? But maybe a more general term that is understandable is attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can define attraction as being productive or destructive, because absolutely attraction is a God-given human condition. Like if we didn't experience attraction, then nothing would happen. Like a lot of society would just stall and just stop. Like we wouldn't be motivated, we wouldn't get married, wouldn't be in relationships. So attraction is maybe the overall umbrella term that like is in my mind currently. But there's obviously, like you're saying, which I think is a beautiful point, Cathy, that there's a distinction between a healthy and unhealthy attraction. Kozan, what are your thoughts on that in your experience regarding like the two types of attraction?
I know in many of the crushes I've had, I've seen people only like by the physical appearance, like, oh, she looks pretty or whatever. And I think that's more of an unhealthy attraction, since these things change. Like people will grow older and they won't be like that anymore. So if per se I was motivated by these kind of physical factors and got married to this person, and then they got older, that would change. And so my love for them would change too, because that's why I started, or why I pursued that relationship. But things like who they are, what the kind of the character and those sorts of things, I think is a more healthy attraction, because it doesn't change. And I mean, I don't think solely that shouldn't be your sole reason for pursuing someone. There's also other stuff, but I think it's more healthy, since you're looking at who the person really is, and that won't change. Yeah.
I'm actually curious, when I mean, for women, when we have crushes, at least I think for me and a few other, most sisters, we get attracted to actually inner qualities. That's why it's becoming so much harder to distinguish, is this right or is this wrong? But for men, in the male perspective, is it primarily externally driven that a crush begins?
I can't speak for other guys, but me, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll share a real example, that a conversation that happens pretty frequently, because I talk a lot with people that have unhealthy relationships with media, social media, porn. And, when the topic of crushes and attraction comes up in the matching process, and the conversation goes like, well, it's okay, it's natural, it's fine. And the general consensus is that attraction is okay, right? But when I ask about their behavior and their habits, and I ask, point blank, do you have an unwanted porn addiction? And they're like, yeah. Well, it's like you're looking through a lens at women or at men or yourself, whoever, of what is attractive, what is not attractive, based on years of training your brain and your eyes. And if you're looking through that lens of what is attractive based on what media, social media, porn, Instagram, whatever it is, has taught you, it's very, 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 very unlikely that you can look at everyone's unique God-given qualities as we're supposed to. Because if everybody only looked for the spouses with the most attractive qualities, internal or external, whatever the training is, what would happen to society? No one would get married, right? Because not everybody is like that. Not everybody is attractive according to the ways that you have deemed them attractive based on exposure to whatever media, right? So my point is, like, if you are even considering like, oh, is this a healthy attraction or not a healthy attraction? The simple litmus test is, do you have an unhealthy relationship with media? Do you spend a lot of time on Instagram? And there have been studies that actually show that if you go swipe through lots of photos of women or men that are very attractive, and then right after you look at your own partner, your own spouse, you will significantly see them less attractive after swiping through a bunch of photos, right? So it's like there's a direct correlation between the stuff that we're consuming, the stuff that we're using, that affects the lens through which we look at people. And isn't it sad that if you look through the lens of that, it is so much harder to look at the God-given qualities and characteristics of every single person? Because ideally, right, in an ideal world, we look at every man and woman and ourselves as like, wow, this person is infinitely uniquely beautiful in their own characteristic. They're just beautiful. And we see that not in a sexual or perverted or a lustful way, but just like, wow, this is an attractive person. And if you can look at people through that lens, then yes, it makes finding a matching partner a lot easier, because then you can sift through all the friction of all the external stuff, and you can get right to the heart of the relationship, which is what actually contributes most profoundly to a long-term relationship. The successful long-term relationship is predicated not on the external things that people have, but the internal qualities that they have, the characteristics, the values they have, the mission that they have, the emotional ability, intelligence that they have. So this is just like a word of caution, is like, we can have this conversation about attraction and crushes, but ultimately the litmus test is, what is our relationship with this stuff we're consuming? What lens are we looking through at people and ourselves? Are we looking at ourselves in the mirror and judging ourselves based on whatever we think is attractive or not? Or we're looking through the lens of, how does God see me? What is it that I contribute and bring to this world that only I can? Anyways, this is like, I'm realizing as I'm talking about this, a much deeper topic than just like crushes and stuff. But anyways, what do you guys thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think when you're talking about lenses, and actually morning devotion was kind of similar to that. The topic was, and it pertained to husband and wife. The topic was, how often do you see your spouse actually as God's child, or do you just see them as your husband or your wife? But do you go deeper into who they really are and what makes them so special to God? And I think because of the, the day to day that we forget, because we're living in an external world, we forget that the person that we are either involved with or married to or blessed to is more than just, a bag of bones and, and like, just a body, but they are actually God's child. And we forget that deeper aspect of it. But in regards to crushes and, and how we take it any further, I definitely think with how society is today, it's becoming so common to make it, just a thing, like almost like a tick on your score sheet of how many people have you are you attracted to, how many have you dated, how many have you seen. And in a way, it's similar to dating, where it just tarnishes the value of that final relationship that you're meant to have. And I think with regards to when is it okay, I think right now, when you're preparing for the matching and preparing yourself to be a future spouse, it's important to appreciate other people's beauty. But when you start fantasizing a life with someone, and you know what? It's not just for singles. I know a lot of people who compare their spouse that they're already married to someone else, another man, another woman, another what if. And I think you're always going to do that comparison if you're not fully settled in your relationship with your significant other, with your spouse that God gave to you. And it can always happen if you're not really sure about what you're looking for in a spouse as a single person. So I think defining what you value in a person and only wanting to pursue that type of person that leads you closer to God, that's closer to your value system, and etc., is one way to realize what's healthy and what's not. You may be attracted to the most beautiful girl in, I don't know, GPA or camp, whatever. But if their character and their attitude and, where they see themselves in the future doesn't exactly align with who you want to be and what kind of family you want to pursue, it's easier to kind of sift through, is this healthy for me or is it not? Can God be involved with it, or will he be pushed further away? So I think having a clear set of value systems and what you're looking for in a partner is super important, and that's kind of like your center. I don't know if that makes sense. But
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. I think that really paints a picture of like, it's not just a decision you make and then you get to the top of the mountain, you're like, oh, now I'm good, right? I'm blessed now everything's hunky-dory. But as long as the underlying kind of root issue is not addressed, then it's just going to be brought into the relationship later on.
mm-hmm.
Kozan, do you have any thoughts?
Like for the, I don't know, quote unquote solution to crushes, like the first, like I think the first place you should stop at is like this God-centered view that Benjy you're talking about, and Cathy, that like it's so, like from seeing from this kind of horizontal perspective, it's so easy to see everything like that changes in people, and I mean pretty things. I mean, even Divine Principle, they talk about original value in like the first chapter, and that and I feel like seeing from this original value brings out the most beautiful part of people. But I mean, I don't have much to say. You guys said it all. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we're getting into like, how do you actually do this? We've identified why is it that we feel this a little like this discrepancy in our heart as people of faith who have high standards for our lives, believe in the value of the blessing, and at the same time are faced with the reality of an unwanted distraction, essentially. So I think the first step in figuring out how to actually address this is to understand what are the negative effects of this behavior in this action, right? Because until we understand how something negatively affects us, it's hard to change our behavior. Does that make sense? It's like it's not until people go to the doctor and realize that they have high blood pressure or high cholesterol or whatever, or a thyroid issue, that they actually start to change their behavior. Because people can say all day, every day, like, you got to exercise, you got to eat healthy, you got to do whatever. But until you can see right in front of you the impact of your decisions and the weight of those decisions, then it's easier to change. So I'll ask you guys right now, like, what are the negative effects of crushes? Because that's kind of a hard thing to understand, because there are so many justifications as to why it's fine, it's normal, it's totally cool, right?
I have like some notes that I wrote down for this one because it's but yeah, I think the biggest one is like it. I know on GPA we have like this thing, like, you're not here to look for a matching partner, and you're not here to we're here to focus on our own growth. And when we have crushes, it's very distracting from that growth. We do a lot of fundraising and things to work on ourselves, but when we have our minds full of this person, it's so easy to drift off from that, and you're wasting a lot of time. And it's also distracting for the other person, because like the nature of like loving someone, even if it's like crushes, you want to be with them, you want to give and take with them, talk to them, and that kind of unhealthy interaction can be very unhealthy. And this other person, I mean, whether you notice it or not, like, they start to become more fond of you. It doesn't have to be like in a romantic kind of way, but your like my intentions aren't going to be like right. They're not going to be. It's a bit very selfish. So that like kind of interaction, that kind of friendship will be very conditional and change a lot. So yeah, and it can hurt the other person, because once you don't like them anymore and don't have a crush, and you just kind of leave, and then what happened to that? I thought we were friends. So
interesting. Yeah, 100%. I like that point you made about it being a distraction from life. I would say not just for GPA, like regardless of what you're doing. Would you say that crushes in your life have been a distraction, Kozan?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to study and like, oh, like they pop up my head, like, oh, no. Focus.
Why do you think, like, fundamentally, why is it that people have crushes?
I think
what's going on internally? Go ahead.
Yeah. Some people might have it to fill themselves up of something that they don't have, like a lack of love. I know in my case it wasn't. I mean, it's not apparently that, like, didn't feel like I was unloved by my parents. So I can only speak from my own personal testimony. But for me, it was seeing something that was like beautiful. Oftentimes I'd be attracted by physical appearance, but sometimes I'd have like this kind of more internal, these inner qualities would be very attractive. And like something that's beautiful is something, I think Divine Principle defines it as like something that receives a lot of love. So like these people would be loved by people that I respect. So if I had like my captain or something, or like my, like, I don't know, this is just an example, but if my commander, for example, gave a lot of love to this, or attention to this person, or my teacher or something, and then I saw that, it's like, I want to receive that same love from my commander. I want this attention. And so like naturally you want to be around this person more, and even without like a crush or anything. Like I do that with my friends, and such. This wanting for this kind of love, and yeah. So that's one example of me.
Yeah, that's really deep. Yeah, we'll get into that more. Like, why is it that we experience crushes even though we don't want them, right? But let's like take a step back because I wanted to hear Cathy share as well. Like, what are the negative effects of crushes?
Yeah, I think I'd say the same. It's just very distracting. And but I feel like it's just, you don't ask for it to happen. I think it's just so natural, and that doesn't make it okay, but I think it's, like I said earlier, I think it's God given that these things happen. But it's being able to, I guess, understand when the right time is to act on feelings, and what way and in what manner do you handle this crush. I mean, I feel like I've had crushes ever since I was as young as, I was just telling my husband, probably like third grade, on other little boys who would share their lunch with me. It's just act of kindness, and that's attractive. Not necessarily it was because of their physical appearance. It's just that, oh wow, this person is just so nice, and what a nice person. You want to be with that person. And I think it's a very innocent way, but then you would have to make sure that, your parents are raising you with the right standards, that you wait until there's a certain age, there's a certain time that it's okay. Very much like God gave Adam and Eve they were supposed to be together, but God gave them a clear timeline of when it's okay to pursue that relationship. And until then, it's just a brother-sister relationship. So yeah, what are the negative effects? Yeah, it's very time consuming. It strays you away from what you should be focusing on. But I think what's super important is being surrounded by the right family who's able to guide you, in understanding when the right time is to pursue certain crushes and how you deal with them. I have made justifications before, like in high school, not necessarily college, but high school, that was a tough year for many people. And, sometimes you find yourself being attracted to someone because, oh, this guy is Christian. He's very, he believes in God. He's got a great family. I can see myself being married to someone like this, even though they're not, and you make these justifications. And there's many of my friends who've gone through that, and I've had those thoughts myself. But when you stop and think, if I pursue this, is this the life that I want to live? Because if I pursue that, then this is how my life is going to look like, possibly. Then you kind of outweigh the pros and cons. It's like, how much do you value your life, knowing God, knowing your parents, going the way of the blessing versus the other side, and that can be applied to other scenarios, whether they're in the church or not. So I think crushes generally are okay. It's how we deal with them, it's how we pursue them, and it's what kind of standards we have that are coming in from people that we trust, like our parents, leaders, our ables, friends, and how they, influence the way we handle these things.
Yeah, 100%. I guess I will respond to this question by first addressing this question, which is, why do people fundamentally develop crushes, even though they don't want them, right? Now, this is an important question, because if you're in the camp of, oh, crushes are fine and normal and natural, the most natural thing in the world, and you should be attracted to anyone and everyone you want and just flirt with them as much as you want. If you're in that camp, then, I mean, this podcast is not for you, but I know for a fact that the people that are listening to this, according to our Spotify stats, the 80% of them that are under 30 and 66% of them that are male are not in that camp. And they're of the people that are like, I really want the blessing. I want to have an incredible marriage and family in the future. And I hate having crushes. I hate it. Right. To the same extent, people say, I want to have all of this, and I hate that I have a porn addiction, or I hate that I can't get rid of whatever unwanted behavior it is. So for me, the fundamental reason people have crushes really came to light at a workshop recently. I was at a high noon workshop that we were staffing, and we were doing a panel, and a sister was asking us about crushes, and Karina Mendez was on the panel, and she gave the best response that I thought of. And I never heard this before. And she said that crushes are a form of an addiction. And I was like, whoa, because it's really, really hard to swallow that. But if you look through the lens of an addiction as not just like someone's addicted or not addicted, but actually an addiction is a very, very common state that most of us are in to some extent. If you define an addiction as a tendency to want to escape a behavior to something else, a tendency to want to escape a specific negative emotion, specifically stress, anxiety, boredom, whatever, to some kind of stimulant to help us escape that reality. If you look at an addiction like that, then it's like, yeah, crushes can 100% be considered an addiction, right? If you don't like the word addiction, that's fine. Just erase that from your mind. But a crush absolutely is 100% an escape from something. Would you say that, Kozan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And specifically, this really came to light again when I was mentoring a guy who was really struggling with porn habit, but also he was struggling with a crush that he was having with a coworker, right? And he was like, she's not a member. I want to get blessed, but I'm experiencing this intense crush. And I was like, so how long has this crush been going on? And he's like, well, a few years, right? And I was like, so what have you done? Like, have you acted on this crush, this at all? Like this infatuation that he's having? And he was like, yeah, well, once a week I'll kind of talk to her and I'll, fantasize about her or whatever it is, right? And I was like, dude, you're stoking the fire. You're feeding the monster. You're poking at the fire and you're not just letting it die. Because the reality is, in my experience at least, if you just give it time, the crushes usually kill themselves off if you don't stoke it. If you don't poke the fire, if you do not feed the monster, then it'll just die naturally because you stop giving power to it. But the reason I think, in my opinion, again, that crushes develop and they linger and they last for a long time is because it's a kind of like an escape. When we're feeling emotions of stress, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, these emotions that we don't know how to deal with, we tend to go to the easiest form of escapism, which we can think of, which sometimes is just thinking about fantasizing about what it would be like to live in a different reality where this person was my spouse and we could just laugh and giggle and have a great relationship, right? So when I think of it, crushes as like a form of escapism, then the next natural question is like, how do you deal with the negative emotions in a productive way, as opposed to going to stoke that fire? So that's the way that I've thought about crushes. That's been really helpful for me, and also talking with this guy and mentoring and explaining to him that it's a form of escapism, or it can be seen as a form of an addiction. And it's not that it's wrong or evil or bad. It's just understanding so that we know how to deal with it. Because it's realizing that when I feel most infatuated by this person, and usually I'm thinking about things, it's usually associated with emotions of feeling stress that day. Right. And I started asking them, like, when you're really struggling with this crush, do you feel like on those days you're more stressed or more depressed or lonely? He's like, yeah. And to the same extent, like on GPA, Kozan, it's like, if you have something that you're really working for every day and you're busy and you're spiritually high and you're working towards everything that you're doing on GPA, would you say it's easier or harder to manage crushes when you're in that kind of environment?
It's easy.
It's easier.
Yeah. Unless if I'm like fundraising, then I'm like get stressed out because a lot of rejections. But if I'm like, if I feel like I have a strong connection with God and spiritual high, and then it's easier to like talk to someone, like get over it, or not think about it.
Yeah, but what do you think about that point? Do you feel like it is a form of escapism, like when you're feeling negative emotions?
Yeah, it's definitely an escape. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know I've kind of used fantasizing to deal with stress. Yeah, I think like one thing like I kind of wanted to add about like why it's negative, has negative effects, is like being ungenuine. And I mean, it goes along with distraction, but like Cathy said, it's time consuming. Like when you go to the restroom, you're checking your appearance, you're saying, oh, do I look good, whatever. And then when you're around this person, you're not acting as yourself. I'm not acting as myself. And it's kind of like living a lie. And it's really hard. Like if the person, like if I many times to check myself, I think like if this person got married to me and I was like this, living this lie, trying to check my appearance and all these things, how long could I keep that up for? Like how long could I keep, doing all these things, like going out of my way, spending more time? Like I don't really think, it's like building a relationship off of something that's not really me. And I, that person, if they do get attracted to me when I'm checking my appearance or whatever, then that's the person that they're liking isn't like who I really am. And I think like one of the most satisfying things, especially when I talk to my parents, is being loved for who I am. And I tell them, like all my struggles and everything. And then my mom, she pulls me aside and she just gives me a big hug, like, Kozan, I love you. And it's like, oh, so yeah, I think crushes prevent that. That's the side.
Yeah, that's deep.
Sorry, I strayed away from the
no,
question
that's
a little
good.
bit.
It's a solution. Now we're really getting to like, what are the solutions here? So let's just like figure out, how do we deal with these behaviors? If you identify that you have crushes or attraction or infatuation and you think it's not productive, how do you deal with it in a productive way?
Good point. Cold showers. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's like the old school.
Smack it out of yourself.
Sometimes it's just literally removing yourself from the company of that person. I feel like, especially coworkers, people that you see daily, I feel like you build this chemistry because you see them on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it's not realistic to be asked to be transferred somewhere else, but oftentimes if you, and Benjy was saying that, just earlier, it's, stoking the fire. It's how involved are you becoming with this person, and the less interaction, the better. If you think it's an unhealthy attraction, I know, for example, in my family, I have 5 younger brothers and sisters. So talking to them about their crushes and relationships and things like that is almost like a daily thing. But that's because we live in such a small town where everyone knows each other. And once my siblings have decided to do something outside of our city, like attending a workshop, going to GPA, going to Toronto to see other blessed kids in the area, once they start doing that and removing themselves from the situation, and again being more involved with having God as the center of their activity, it becomes easier to to put the fire out, I guess, because you're separating themselves from the actual problem. But I think, back to your point, if it is indeed a form of escapism, understanding what you're trying to escape from is going to be super important, and addressing that root problem. What is it that you feel like you're lacking, and how can you address it in a healthy manner instead of feeding it from an unhealthy perspective? So unless you're clear about what it is that you're seeking and what you're not getting, and you're filling it with something else, I think it'll be very hard to move forward. So I think that's an important aspect of it too.
Yeah, I love that. That's 100%. So essentially, it's like what you're saying, if you figure out what you're escaping from and address that, then you stop giving power to the symptom if you address the root cause.
I think one thing that's really saved me is reporting, letting someone know, getting an accountability partner. And same with like porn, when you have this addiction, letting someone know. I mean, for crushes, it's like, especially when you're around that person and you can't leave, like you're saying, like it's not so easy to get a transfer. I mean, the solution isn't quite simply like quit your job and you'll be good, because then the next place you go, you might get a crush. But I think for me, I've told some older brothers and about like, hey, I'm having this struggle, like, and just seeing their perspective of it. And sometimes it's just as simple, you don't even need advice, just need to let them know, like, hey, I'm having this crush. And then just simply knowing that they're around and they're watching you will prevent any, like, prevent you from, misstepping. It's easier to misstep when you're alone or in an environment where nobody knows that I have this crush on someone. But then also you can go to them as well for advice. If you need advice, or from this higher perspective, so someone who's sober per se can give you what's up.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things we can do is stop giving power to it. And I think that's one of the reasons that it consumes and it's insidious, is because if we're living in shadows, we're giving power to it. We're giving power to it. We're giving meaning to it being controlling over us. And the fastest way to eliminate a shadow is to what?
Put it into light.
Shed light on. Exactly. Yeah. So when you tell someone something, it sends a very strong signal to your brain, to your body, your spirit, and your soul that things are different, and you don't want to give power to this thing anymore. And I think like when people say stuff like, oh, I have a crush, or I crush easy, or my crush, right? Like the wording around it is really kind of is a red flag for me, simply because it's like it's an identity that you're placing in yourself. It's the similar thing of like, I don't know, I talk a lot with addicts to stuff. So people, go through programs and they say, wake up every day and they say, my name is so-and-so, and I am an addict, which I think is actually not helpful, because you're putting a label on yourself and you're ascribing a definition for who you are as a person. And if you are somebody, your behaviors will follow who you are as a human being. And I'm not saying that people are not addicts. I'm not downplaying the fact that people have severe addictions. I'm not, just to be real clear. But I am saying that I think it is not helpful to label yourself as I have a crush, because as soon as you do that, you give power to it. I think a more healthy approach is I have a dependency on having crushes and fantasizing about stuff or porn or whatever to escape. And how am I addressing this? That's a more accurate reality of what's going on. And people walk around saying, my crush, this person is my crush. It's like, what? Who told you that you have a crush, that you are an owner of that person as their crush? You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, like, it's frustrating, because I think labeling ourselves is one of the most powerful things, or unlabeling ourselves is the most powerful thing we can do, because we stop giving power to it. And that's what we're talking about when we're saying stop stoking the fire, stop feeding this monster, is because you're giving power to it day by day. But when you tell someone, it's like, hey, I have a crush, or I feel attraction to somebody, then you stop giving so much power to it and weight to it. And this is one of the reasons that I think that people of high moral values, like all of us, of high faith, struggle with this kind of thing, is because we feel a lot of shame that's associated with this stuff. We feel so much shame because we give so much power and weight to it, right? We do. It's like, I should be this, but I'm not. And therefore no one would accept me and no one would love me. And no one would give me grace or acceptance or unconditional love if they knew this thing about me. And that's an unfortunate reality of having high moral values, is that we usually have a lot of shame. We beat ourselves up a lot, right? Wouldn't it be nice if we just be like, yeah, it's fine. It's like, let me move on. If we could just be open about stuff and address stuff in the open. So I think a way to like shortcut this feeling of shame and hypocrisy is just to shed light on it and just tell someone. And when you do that, you immediately eliminate the shadow from your life. Not tell everybody, no, but then just telling somebody is helpful. You know what I'm saying? So that would be like my I guess basic piece of advice is, how much power are you giving this behavior? And are you looking at it and labeling it as it actually is? Or can you look at it as more as like, I have an infatuation and I have a dependency on this attraction because I try to escape, usually when I'm feeling stressed or anxious or lonely. So like Cathy was saying, if I'm trying to escape these emotions, what's the natural solution? It's figure out what I'm escaping from and address that. And when you address that, you don't need to escape anymore. It's magical. I talk every single day with people who have porn addictions, guys, every single day. And it's shocking how quickly people can change when they address the root issue. When they address what am I escaping from and fix that issue and stop running from it and address the stress, the anxiety, the boredom, the depression, the loneliness, the whatever, it's shocking to people how quickly they can change, because they don't need it anymore. Because they continue to do that, and then they wake up one day and they go, wow, I haven't thought about this crush in a long time. I haven't thought about acting out with porn and masturbation in a long time. What's going on? Well, it's because you were addressing the thing that was causing you to want to escape.
So I guess you figured the solutions.
Yeah, it's part of the solution. I hope more than anything, this is like a paradigm shift or perspective change for stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like we said before, when we think about crushes, it's very, very, it's like, it's a predefined term that everybody understands the same. Like crushes is something that everybody just experiences and we have no control over what it is, but we're like changing the paradigm. So we're defining it a little more clearly as to what's actually going on so that we can address the real thing, right? Especially for people that don't want them. And that's the catch. That's the kink in our system. It's like, why do us as unificationists in our movement have behaviors that we hate? Everybody does. Like, that's indisputable. Everyone has behaviors that they continue to do that they hate, that they don't want. Why is it? It's a really important question, I think. Anger, violence, frustration, sadness, up and down emotional yo-yoing, food addiction, anything, you know what I'm saying? So it's a really an important question. I think underlyingly, when we address that, we resolve a lot of the issues that we have in our lives, in our faith, in our families, in our couples, because the root is always very, very similar. It's always very, very similar, which means the solution is always very, very similar.
Yeah, I agree.
I think like something, I mean, sometimes I feel like it's hard to like report. I know some, like when I was before, it was really difficult for me to tell someone who is in the premises that I have like that I might have an infatuation, a crush for someone that was also in the same area or vicinity. But something that can help me get over that is catch it early. Like you have to, it's like the more like you said, stoke the fire, fed the monster. Like the harder it is to get out of it, and the harder it is to tell someone about it, because you might. I know one fear I had was like, you're telling me now. I would think that the person I'd be saying is like, you're telling me now after all this time, and which is really not the case. But that's the kind of like the irrational fear that I had was. So it's a lot easier to, you have this crush and you're saying notice. And I mean, I've had lots of experience with this issue. But like, it's so liberating to just let someone know, like the tiniest feeling, like you don't be in denial. Just like, I know many times I was in denial. I don't have a crush on this person. No, I just kind of like them as a sister or whatever. But like that's the hint, like that's the sign. Like the moment I start being in denial of these feelings is the moment I need to tell someone about it, because it'll only like grow otherwise into something less healthy. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So what you're saying is noticing earlier on, getting better at noticing your emotional state, and then telling someone way before it becomes an issue. Interesting. Yeah.
So, yeah, I know like some guys might not be in that situation, or people might not be in that situation where it's like maybe they have stoked the fire and they're listening to this podcast. But for me, like I know that happened to me too. Just like think realistically, like is my situation gonna change if I don't say anything? It's only gonna get worse. And is this person that I'm gonna talk to really going to look at me in such a like disdain, like, oh, you didn't tell me, like you're a terrible person? Like, no, that's not the case at all. They're gonna only see you as, like, thank you for telling me. Like, sure, maybe you didn't tell me for a long time or whatever, but you're telling me now, and that's what matters, and now we can work on it. So yeah.
Cathy, would you have any words for people that are struggling with their crushes right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is for anyone struggling with their crush, I think they need to understand what the end goal is for this person. Like at what level are they at with their crush? Are they actually thinking about pursuing this? And if they are, why? And is it healthy if they do? Meaning, for example, if you're in the matching process, you can actually suggest people to your parents, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the process. But suggesting a person based on physical appearance and based on lust and and all the external qualities, is that really what you want to base your relationship on? And you figure out very quickly if you actually pursue that relationship, that doesn't go any further than the initial talking stage of your matching process, because then you uncover the internal aspects, their qualities, their vision, and where they see themselves, and it doesn't align with yours. So if you're in the matching process and you're considering bringing someone up to your parents or your leaders to consider because you have a crush on them, you think they're a great person, but you don't understand the internal qualities and work that it requires, it's not going to go very far, or it can cause you a lot of pain in the process. So I think going back to the beginning of our conversation, Benjy was mentioning, it's very important to define what crush means versus lust versus what a healthy aspect of it could be. So understanding your value system towards relationships, I think it's key. And secondly, if you're crushing hard, and like what we were talking about this whole time, you have to bring light to it. You have to expose it, and not just to people that you relate to horizontally, because that could actually be more destructive. They can encourage that. So you need to go to someone who isn't able, who you really respect, who has a healthy relationship or outlook on relationships, and ask for their guidance, and have a prayerful attitude towards it, and really treat it as, almost like a condition on working on yourself and working on your future spouse, and what that entails, because this is, it's a big hurdle to face, and you're going to be thrown a lot of hurdles in the matching process, but it's all worth it to overcome it if the outcome is the type of family that you want in the future.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, thanks, Cathy. I was just, when you were talking, thinking about the version of me many years ago that was deep in a crush and feeling totally hopeless and infatuated. And I felt like I was in a ditch and just tormented, like we've been talking about. And if I were to go back and talk to that little Benjy, teenage Benjy, I guess, I would say that, like, don't worry about it. Like, you'll be okay. Mm-hmm. And just let it die. Time heals a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And if you're feeling this pain, then just give it time and don't worry about it. And you're not weird. You're not weird or strange or perverted or anything like that. But if I would say, if you have an unwanted attraction and infatuation that is insidious and lasts a long time, it means that you are subconsciously trying to keep that infatuation, because you're feeding it either through fantasy or interactions, right? So that's what I would probably say is this is your choice. You can just stop giving it power and just let it die down, which it always does, by the way, always does, right? Cathy, it's like,
yeah,
it always does eventually, always. It will not last forever. And so if you just let it die down, it will. And if it's not, that means that, honestly, look at yourself and see if you're feeding this monster a little bit. Yeah. All right, Kozan, any last words?
If you have problems, reach out. Yeah. Subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah, we love requests. So this was a request from you. We also have some other requests that are coming real soon for podcast episodes. And if you like this episode, we appreciate you sharing it, but also send us an email or message or something just to let us know that you heard it. We love hearing feedback. And also, if you have any questions, that's we love hearing that as well. If you want to join the MatchNet program, which is a step-by-step guide through this matching process with all the education that you need to get blessed, then go to matchnet.us, and that is everything you need. All right. So feel free to share this around. Lots of love to you guys. Thank you, Kozan. Thank you, Cathy, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.